Well, welcome to Wednesday in the Word. This is a look through the Bible where we look at each book of the Bible. And this week's book is what, Philip?
The book of Esther.
Esther. You want to relay the fun fact again, just in case they missed it?
So, fun fact is the book of Esther never mentions God. It's the only book in the whole Bible that doesn't mention God by name. Now, what we will see is you obviously see God's hand working.
Absolutely.
And the main theme of this book is kind of what we talked about. What we thought the main theme was God's providence, God's hand, God's sovereignty.
Yeah.
However you want to look at it, is God shows up. That's just it.
Yeah.
God shows up. Especially people who revere him, people who are after his heart. God shows up.
And what's great about this is he takes a pagan king and works through him in a way that brings glory to him, even though this king doesn't convert.
Yep.
You know, because of a single servant, two single servants willing to do what God asks them to do. So
the book kind of starts out with Esther becoming queen, but before that, the king, his wife ends up, not being around anymore, all those things, and kind of Esther kind of steps into that queen role, and she's a Jew in a Persian Empire.
Yeah, not a good fit, not a good mix.
And she decided to keep her background a secret. She didn't want people to know who she was, probably because of that reason. They probably wasn't, too kindly dealt with, for sure. But then we see kind of this thing happen where the bad guy of the story, his name's Haman, he kind of comes in, and he does some good things. He gets, respected by the king, honor comes to him. But then you got another guy. So there's three main characters to this story. You have Esther, who's the queen. You have Haman, who's the bad guy, who's kind of right under the king.
Yeah.
He's way up there in power, all that, just under the king. And then you have another guy named Mordecai. So Mordecai's related to Esther. I forget in what way, maybe an uncle, something like that, but he's related to Esther. He's a Jew as well. And everybody's bowing down to Haman. Everybody in the house is bowing down to Haman, but not Mordecai. Yep. Mordecai's not bowing down to Haman. You see that kind of example in other books like Daniel, with the fiery furnace. Yep. You see all that there, but you see, and kind of this is the same idea, is Mordecai's just not going to do it. Well, that makes Haman very upset. And he's so upset, and this is kind of confusing to me, but he is so upset that he's like, Mordecai just can't die. All the Jews have to die. Yeah. Like however long BC this was, mini Hitler.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the same idea.
Wipe them out.
He wants to kill all the Jews. He's upset at Mordecai, and he wants the Jews to be annihilated. Well, Esther's got some power, and we'll see as we'll read. I'll just briefly touch on it. But Mordecai asks Esther to do it. To say something to the king, because Haman comes in and has the king issue this decree, and the king stamps it with his approval to basically wipe out the Jews, that the Jews wouldn't be there anymore. And so Mordecai gets this instruction or this edict or however you want to say it, this law, that's what's going to happen. And he's so distressed, he goes to Esther. He asks Esther, will you tell the king, will you talk to the king? And she says she didn't really want to do it because she could die if she does it. Well, a little bit more convincing talking, and Esther decides to do it. Well, then, fast forward a little bit in the book of Esther. It's an awesome story. Don't say the Bible is boring, because this thing is filled with just all sorts of action. And it's important to know because our lives are filled with that amount of action. So anyways, Esther goes to the king, talks to the king, all that type of stuff. Haman, basically, Mordecai comes in. He does something that gets him honored. He does something good, and then the king's like, "Well, let's celebrate him. Let's celebrate Mordecai." And
basically, what happened was Mordecai saved the king's life.
Yeah.
So because the doorkeeper was going to kill him, and Mordecai found out about it and told the two eunuchs were there that got back to the king. So he was like, "This guy saved my life. How did I not know this? Or, we gotta make this guy, make this guy's name known."
Yeah. So the king's gonna honor him. Well, the way that he honors him is he uses
what a slap in the face to Haman, right?
he uses Haman.
Oh man.
Go put the robe on him. Take him by horse, bring him here. Let's celebrate him. And now Haman has to go out, and he puts him, and he has to say it to everybody while they're riding through the court or whatever.
You think he was yelling there? Or you think it's more like this guy? Come see him at the fair. No, he had a trumpet and everything. He has a parade for this.
Yeah, you basically honor this man.
Oh man!
And they get there. They get to the banquet, Esther's banquet. Haman gets an invite. He's kind of excited about it, but he's still pretty upset about the whole Mordecai situation.
Yeah.
Super upset about that. But then Esther says something pretty bold. She says, "Somebody in your midst has basically had the king issue this decree that my people, the Jews, be killed, annihilated, destroyed, all those things." And the king basically asks who? And she says Haman. And the king ain't sent with that.
No,
the man saved his life.
Yeah.
And Haman is taken out.
Yeah.
Your Bible says he was hung. My Bible says he's impaled. Can I tell you, both of those would be not good
And what's
things?
even more ironic, so Haman built this 50 cubit tower to gallows to hang Mordecai on. So then before that, so he builds that. Then he has to parade this man that he hates around the city, put a robe on him, treat him like royalty. And then he's the one who ends up getting hung on the thing that was built to kill the guy he hated.
Yeah.
You followed me? It's like,
yeah.
This is such a whirlwind, but that's how God works. Even though his name isn't said, you can see that God uses even bad things, and even people that aren't, uses this pagan king to carry out his will.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Phil, why don't you read chapter 4, 11 through 14?
Sure. That says, "All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that any man or woman who goes into the inner court to the king who has not been called, he has but one law. Put all to death except the one whom the king holds out the golden scepter, that he may live. Yet I myself have not been called to go into the king these 30 days. So they told Mordecai Esther's words." Going on to 13, right? 14, excuse me, sorry. "And Mordecai told them to answer Esther, 'Do not think in your heart that you will escape from the king's place any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to this kingdom for such a time as this?'"
So, Phil, what do we think about this passage in Esther?
This is, they know what's at stake. Having to go, this ask that Mordecai is asking of Esther, they know what's at stake. They understand that if you're not invited to this throne room, there's a good chance, actually almost 100% chance that you're not going to make it out of there alive. And so this is what they're up against in their faith. But it's great because he says in verse 14, "For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place." Where's that other place? God already knows what's going on. He knows the outcome of this. It's not a surprise to Esther. I mean, it's not a surprise to him what's going to happen. But he says, "But your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come out to this kingdom for such a time as this?" He's saying, this is the reason you're here, Esther, to deliver your people from sure death. All you have to do is go in there and put your life on the line and talk to this king. That's all you have to do. Couple things. Culturally, women, regardless of status, don't talk. Even if you are a queen, Secondly, she's a Jew in a foreign land. Doesn't work out right. And thirdly, she's a woman. That's the same thing as number one. For those taking it. So it just didn't happen. So this guy's asking, her relative's asking, hey, to save these people, this is what it's going to take, and this is her attitude. I know it's not, what we're gonna read, but
it's
her
one of my favorite
attitude.
verses.
Oh, where is it at?
Like
16. 4:16 says, and this is what Esther, actually 15. Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai. Verse 16 says, "Go gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast for me, neither eat nor drink for 3 days, 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise, so I will go to the king, which is against the law." So she's saying, okay, I'll do it, but I need you guys to do something. She says, I need you to fast for 3 days and nights. Don't eat or drink anything. And I'll tell my maids to do the same thing. We're not going to do anything. And the tail end of verse 16 is this. And she says this, "I will go to the king, which is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." And regardless, because she knew this was the only way that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And she was willing to put her life on the line to make, give her people a chance.
Yeah.
You can imagine. I don't know what the most stressful thing you've ever done in your life is, but for me, it has never been, oh, am I going to live if I say this, or am I going to die if I say this or do this? No, but she says, you know what? Regardless of outcome, regardless of the circumstance, and regardless of things to come, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Why? Because she's a servant of the Most High God, and she understood. I mean, Paul said it best: to live as Christ, to die as gain, and she was ready.
Yeah.
To die for her people.
Yep.
For a simple ask.
Yep. That's one of my favorite verses in Esther, because it's such an attitude that Christ calls us to have. You see that he even warns the disciples that this is your fate.
Yeah.
That you would die, as you're going to die for my name. And they do.
Yeah.
And that's a huge piece in that calling, or that, that warning even, is out to us as well.
Yeah.
We have a foreign land, and that's the world we live in.
Right.
And you see that, Mordecai tells Esther, that you might be in this, this place for such a time as this. You might be the queen for such a time as this, to save your people,
right.
God's people, God's children. And we're in this world the same way, is we're called to go to whoever is in this foreign land, the world, and share Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Share the gospel.
Absolutely.
And even in some people experience this, through missions and missionaries and things like that. They also have to have the attitude, as just Christians living in America, have to have the same attitude. If I perish, I perish.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because ultimately we don't perish.
No, we don't. We don't ever really experience death.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It's, we're worried about something that we're never going to experience. Because as soon as to be separate, absent from the body, is to be present with the Lord.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You think about that, it just blew my own mind. We're worried about something that we never even experience.
Yeah.
How's that happen?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's
and Esther
amazing.
was ready.
Yeah.
She was ready.
And that's one other thing, is she was ready. She was ready to do what God's called her to.
Yeah.
That's God's providence.
It is.
God's working through the foreign people, like you said, to the king, and God working through Mordecai, God working through Esther, and probably even people who are not even named in the book of Esther.
Yeah.
God works through so many different people who are willing, and sometimes people who are unwilling.
Yeah.
God is beyond our strength, our capabilities, all those. He can do whatever he needs to do. That's just who he is. And that's amazing. I'm so thankful for God's providence in my own life, and I know you are too. So Phil, give us your final thoughts about the book of Esther.
Final thoughts is just a 3-word question. Are you willing? That's all I got.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been a look through the Bible. Tune in next week where we talk about the book of Job.
It'll be a good one.
Yeah.
It'll be a good one.
The book of Job, I love it. It's a good book.
It is.
Yep,
It is.
good book. So if you like this episode, you can like and subscribe. You can share it with a friend. Maybe you struggle with being willing. Listen to Phil's question. Think about it. Ask God how you can be more willing to serve him in whatever capacity or abilities that God's given you, or what he wants you to do, the calling he has on your life. It's an important thing that you have to know, is the calling that God has for you, because he does. He's got one for you. So again, thank you for listening to Kingdom Faith.
See you guys next Wednesday.